Absolutely. Thanks for organizing, David. Very much appreciated.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, definitely from Water Europe's side, I think we've got something really great together today. Anka, can we start and then give the 5 minutes?
Yes, we are live. People are still joining, but they will join. Attendees will join continuously. So yes, you can.
Yeah, fantastic. So yeah, welcome to the International Water Dialogues event. It's going to be held today and tomorrow morning. It's a new flagship event from Water Europe. And this event today will be focusing on international cooperation through a water-oriented living lab approach. We're going to give 5 minutes just for everybody to connect and to settle in. So at 9:05 we'll start, and then we'll run through the agenda and who some of our speakers are here this morning. So we'll give you that time just to connect.
Hello, David. Well, I still have you there. Have you had an opportunity to send me a WhatsApp message yet? Over.
I'll do that now. Yeah, and then we can have a look at it from there. Yeah.
Beauty. Thank you very much. Cheers.
Okay, so it's 9:05 again. Thank you everybody for joining us this morning. We'll now get started on what is going to be a fascinating event. We've got some amazing speakers lined up for you this morning. The International Water Dialogues event, as I was mentioning before, is set to be a flagship event for Water Europe, being led by the Water Beyond Europe Working Group. I am David Smith. I'm the director of WEMB and the lead of the Water Beyond Europe Working Group. My partner in crime, Gaetano Gasale, is not with us today, but he is very much one of the driving forces behind this event. So if you are listening to us, Gaetano, hopefully that sun is shining on you nicely in Italy. and we are missing you here. Today's event will run through the setting of the scene, should we say, on what is international cooperation through a water-orientated living lab approach. We'll have opening words from Ilari Aho, who is the Vice President of Innovation from Water Europe. Then we'll have Astrid Schumacher, who is the Director for Green Diplomacy and Multilateralism from the DG Environment. That will also provide a little bit of a setting the scene, should we say, for today's event. Before we pass on to a good friend of mine and somebody that I've been working with over the last couple of years on our keynote speech on international cooperation from Dr. Mamachloding Tirale. And she is the head of international and stakeholder engagement for the Water Research Commission in South Africa. We'll enter into a really interesting panel discussion on international cooperation. And this will be led by Marie Beeldler. And our speakers within this panel will provide a very interesting perspective from the European side, where we look at the idea of policy. We'll move a little bit broader than that into the neighborhood regions with the Union for the Mediterranean, looking at both southern and northern Mediterranean countries and how international cooperation on water is working, or perhaps not. Then Brigitte Vogel will give us a real insight into the implementation of the EU-India water partnership, so really going more abroad. Before we bring it back, where Panos Palabanos will give us an idea of how research and innovation within water and international cooperation is being driven from the European Commission side. I'll then come back just to round off today's session and to give you a little bit of an insight and an introduction for what we'll be looking at tomorrow, when we really get into the nuts and bolts of the living labs approaches, with two really fantastic examples from Africa and Europe on how international cooperation on water is happening at a practical level. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Ilari Aho. He is the Vice President for Innovation at Water Europe, to give us some opening words before he passes back to me and I can introduce Astrid. So over to you, Ilari.
Many thanks, David, for the introduction, and a very good morning to all of you, or whatever part of the day it might be, wherever you are in the world. It's my great pleasure to welcome all of you to the first edition of the Water Europe International Water Dialogues event. As David mentioned, my name is Ilari Aho. I come from Finland. I'm a board member and the Vice President for Innovation at Water Europe. As my day job, I represent the technology supply side in Water Europe. I work for a company called Uponor, which manufactures and supplies distribution systems for water, sewage, thermal energy, and so forth globally. As David mentioned, the International Water Dialogue is established as a new annual event of Water Europe, with the explicit aim of promoting international cooperation on water-related innovation and advocacy, and in particular to promote the role that the European water sector in general and the Water Europe membership, of course, in particular, can play in achieving the ambitious goals defined for our common global agendas for the future. In particular, of course, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal number 6, clean water and sanitation, which is at the heart of what we do at Water Europe. The event will focus on this in two particular ways. We aim at promoting, as David already mentioned, promoting, explaining, and discussing the concept of water-oriented living labs as a concrete tool for everyone to work around and work with in order to achieve a water smart society. And in addition to that, to contribute to the creation of new and/or improved international partnerships based on the concept of water-oriented living labs, and on twinning arrangements between those of us that work for water-based innovation and development. I assume there are some of you in the audience that are less familiar with Water Europe as an organization. So for your benefit, a couple of words about us also for the beginning. Water Europe originally was one of the European technology platforms initiated by the European Commission in order to foster joint development of agendas and priorities for innovation between the Commission and various industrial sectors. Since then, Water Europe has developed into a rather strong private membership-based organization for promoting and representing water-related innovation and R&D in Europe. We are a multi-stakeholder association currently with more than 250 members representing the whole diversity that you can imagine of the water ecosystem and all aspects of innovation related to that. I would encourage all of you to after this interesting event, if you are not familiar with the Water Europe Water Vision, I would encourage all of you to go to the Water Europe website and check the Water Vision out. It lays down an ambition to achieve a water smart society, which we in Water Europe define through a couple of key characteristics. First of all, in a water smart society, the true value of water is recognized and realized. And when we say value, we mean not only monetary or financial value, but the societal value, the value related to development, the value that water brings as the basis of all human and economic activities. Also, in a water smart society, all available water sources are managed in a way that avoids and eliminates problems with regards to water scarcity, water pollution, lack of access to water resources, and so forth. A water smart society, furthermore, fosters the concept of circularity, builds water and resource loops that are closed to the largest extent possible in order to optimize resource efficiency. The system in a water smart society is resilient against the impacts of our changing climate and, by the way, of the impacts of other changes in our environment, be that the man-made environment technologically or the natural environment through changes that we all see around us. And finally, from a governance standpoint, a key characteristic of a water smart society is that all relevant stakeholders around water are involved in governing the water system. And as you can understand from this, creating, ensuring, and maintaining a water smart society is a huge task. In particular because of the many interdependencies of water with most, if not all, other aspects of our society and economy. And because of this magnitude of the challenge and the number of the interdependencies, we will not be able to reach a water smart society without very broad collaboration both within the water value chain, between different economic sectors, and as the name of the event, International Water Dialogues, implies, also across national and geographical and even political borderlines. We in Water Europe have, over the years, thanks to the hard work of many of our working groups and experts, developed the concept of water-oriented living labs as a central tool in achieving and developing a water smart society. The water-oriented living lab concept is, as mentioned several times, going to be discussed and explained much in detail during the course of this event, But at the basics, it's about creating and maintaining real-life water-related collaborative ecosystems for driving innovations at the community level with a multi-stakeholder concept and with a human inhabitant people-centric approach. So with these opening words, it's my pleasure to wish you a very successful Water Europe International Water Dialogues 2022. And I hope you will all have the chance of engaging as much as possible to the discussions over these couple of days. So thank you and welcome on my behalf.
Thank you, Larry. Yeah, absolutely correct with what you say. The idea of international cooperation is multi-stakeholder. And with that in mind, I think that's a good way of bringing on Astrid Schumacher to give us her opening words. Astrid is a lawyer by training. She is the Director for Green Diplomacy and Multilateralism for the DG Environment. Since she joined the Commission in 1992, she has held a variety of posts in the areas of international relations and environmental policy, and was leading some of the crucial work on the chemical policies, marine issues, and EU's environmental policy strategies. So with that, Astrid, I'd like to hand over to you to provide us with your opening words.
Thank you, Dirk, and good morning, everybody. It's really a pleasure and an honor to be here and to join you for this first International Water Dialogue, which is super timely and couldn't come at a better time, actually, and I explain why in a moment. Just to say in the short introduction, you didn't say one thing. I was at some point head of the water industry unit, so I'm pleased to see some of names that I recognize, including yours, and some others still working on water issues. Now, why do I say that this event couldn't come at a better time? I think I don't need to tell you that the slogan "Water is life," which we use in the European Union, is now more true than ever, because pressure on water resources, of course, grows worldwide. And we see it in the European Union, where drought alone, damage caused by it, has reached about 9 billion per year and affects agriculture, the energy sector, public water supplies. And of course, we're doing extremely well in the European Union, and the situation is much more grave and serious in other parts of the world. And the water vision that has just been set out of Water Europe is actually spot on. It brings together all the elements that makes the European water sector strong, and that are the elements that we believe in the European Commission should also be shared with countries around the world, because these are the ingredients that countries will need in order to tackle their water challenges. Now, what we see, of course, in the European Union is that water is always at the center of development. Therefore, it is at the center of the SDGs. It's a cross-cutting SDGs more than any other. And of course, working on water can always take various ways. But for us, what it should be a symbol of partnership and hope, which we would like to see communities work across borders to manage fresh water, so that fresh water is not a source of conflict, but brings together, is the glue in a way for countries to come together. And this cooperation has to be deepened. Now, when we reach out to countries around the world, as we do in the European Commission and do increasingly on water issues, because these water challenges are so much at the forefront or coming to the forefront of the global economies and of the thinking of governments, we always do that by promoting, let's say, the water governance that we have in the European Union. So that starts, of course, with a multi-stakeholder approach, with also showcasing how we work together with the industry and how we can mutually support each other. But it also always is done against the background of a very comprehensive set of water legislation, which dates back more than 30 years now, and which we try to promote as being, in a way, the gold standard of how to manage water. And of course, this is a dynamic set of legislation. You know that we have a renewed drinking water directive. We have a water reuse regulation that will help cut unacceptable water leakage across our water supply systems and promote the reuse of water for irrigation purposes. We are reviewing the directive on urban wastewater. We have just published our review on the Industrial Emissions Directive. And this is really about then looking how we can transform our wastewater system into a major producer of reusable water, also for industry and other purposes, whilst promoting a more circular water management in all our largest and most water-consuming industries. And at the same time, and that is also important, and we try to bring this into the international discussions, sustainable water management is a critical building block across all the key European Green Deal initiatives. And maybe for once, I don't start with climate change, even though it's almost most obvious there. But I want to mention the Circular Economy Action Plan, which promotes water efficiency, water reuse, eco-efficient processes, and better use of our water resources. And of course, all that helps combat water scarcity and droughts. The biodiversity strategy is maybe not what comes to mind straight away, but it as well sets the goal to restore free-flowing rivers, protect wetlands, designate 30% of our lands and 30% of our seas as protected areas. And our forthcoming nature restoration law will include targets on water bodies. And the Zero Pollution Action Plan, I think with which many of you will be familiar, reserves also a special place for water, aiming to design more effective ways of preventing pollution at source, acting against old and new pollutants across freshwaters and seas, and addressing a multitude of challenges, notably related to health and security aspects of water management. Now, all that comes together in this holistic vision that I think is important for successful water management, and that we feel really also present in Water Europe's water vision. And of course, there is the EU's adaptation strategy, which I could have mentioned first, but I mentioned last now, which we adopted last February 2021, which looks at measures addressing water scarcity, so better water allocation mechanisms, better use of economic instruments, wider use of drought management plans, improved flood risk management planning, improved water efficiency for sectors, again, nature-based solutions for drought and flood risks management. All in all, we see us move towards a situation where some countries will have too much water, other countries will not have not enough water. So the water resilience subject becomes crucial, and we need to find mechanisms of solidarity, how we can work together in the European Union, but also how we can then transpose what we have learned in the European Union worldwide. And of course, governments can only do so much, but innovation and cutting edge technologies will be crucial. And that is where also Water Europe plays a role, and where we come in and should be working together. Now, maybe just a few words before we come to our keynote on what we do in international water dialogues and international cooperation. And there's too much going on to be extensive, but maybe to mention some examples, and starting close to home with the Union for the Mediterranean, where we have, in fact, a long-standing regional cooperation between the EU and the Southern Mediterranean countries, both within the context of the Union for the Mediterranean and then also bilaterally. This is about improving water management and reducing pollution, making sure that countries realize that this also creates clear benefits for all citizens throughout the region in terms of environment, economy, health, quality of life. And of course, once again, looking at the important issue of water reuse and its significant potential in the region, particularly for the agriculture sector. The Union for the Mediterranean ministerial meeting on water took place in 2017, quite a while ago, but it provided important political impetus for the development of a consensual water policy for the Mediterranean region within the UFM, and there's now a water expert group tasked with following it up, and the EU is funding regional water and environment support initiative to foster and exchange good practice in sustainable water management in urban and rural areas. And then looking a bit further afield, we're working on water issues with China, with India, with South Africa, with Brazil, with Iran. And in these countries, what we do chiefly is providing financing and technical support to address water issues, but also have a policy level dialogue where we can portray, or where we can explain our water management policies, our visions, and try to see to what extent this is relevant in these countries and can be transposed. So in China, for example, there are many programs and initiatives that are in progress and allow to design future cooperation. I think many of you will have heard about the long-standing China-Europe water platform with quite an active secretariat that allows for in-depth exchanges on topics of common interest. This feeds into the regular EU-China policy dialogue on water. So we have these two levels of policy discussion, but also a much more practical cooperation platform, which incidentally regularly involves businesses and has led to very interesting results and approaches that seeing that what we do in Europe finds its uptake in China, for example, on integrated water management or on green standards for small hydro power plants. We do similar work and very important work with India on water management in the context of the EU-India Water Partnership established in 2016. I won't say more because Birgit Vogel is here and she's really deeply immersed in that and can explain it much better. But here as well, we just see it's a fruitful exchange of best practice. It includes a range of EU member states and has also then led to joint research initiatives and business cooperation. And once again, this practical cooperation feeds into and gets a bit of a steer by the regular policy dialogue that we maintain with the Indian Ministry of Jal Shakti, which is the water resource ministry. And here, of course, just important to note that India will hold the G20 presidency next year, and we really hope that we can elevate this bilateral water cooperation with India and bring this into the G20 and increase the profile of water cooperation issues in the G20, as is already done this year, by the way, by the Indonesian presidency, which has just held a very interesting water cooperation event. I've mentioned South Africa. Again, we will hear more about it, so I don't have to go into detail. We support an infrastructure investment program for South Africa as one of the activities that we do on water in South Africa, which also can can support investment in water. I want to close maybe with just mentioning again the importance of transboundary cooperation. And I think there's probably no better example than the one that we have in Europe. On the Danube, but of course also on others like the Rhine. But I wanted to mention the creation of the environmental program to the Danube River Basin, which took place 30 years ago, so also in 1991. And it kicked off a process combining policy, cooperation, and action to attain measurably improved water quality, ecosystems, better navigation, better governance mechanisms. And we see the EU and 14 countries, including non-EU countries, of course, work together under the umbrella of the International Commission for the Protection of the Danube River to reverse degradation of water-related ecosystems and the biodiversity loss, restore water quality, health, and improve natural resource use to support economic development. And that really is a kind of example of which the world needs more and which we should be promoting. It's a peaceful and constructive attitude of the Danube riverine countries, some of which were in severe conflict with each other not so long ago. And there we really see how cooperation around water and how managing a river together is a great example of countries creating peace around water. And a bit in the same vein, and there is now a Team Europe, so EU and member states, in the flagship initiative on transboundary water management in Africa, where Team Europe is making over 400 million euros available for cross-border water projects in Africa. We'll be teaming up with the African Union, the EIB, the European Investment Bank, and other partners to ensure that those projects make a real difference on the ground. And there is already a bit of a success story of the Senegal River Basin, which proves that such cooperation works. So in closing, cross-border water cooperation and water cooperation with third countries is all about sustainable development. We will only make progress, we think, through partnerships. And we will only make progress if we are able to come to a common understanding around the world that what is needed for water is the kind of holistic water vision and bringing together all stakeholders that the European water sector has developed, that the European Commission and our member states support. And I want to close on just saying that now is, as I said in the beginning, now is the time to really accelerate and deepen these efforts. Climate COP27 will take place in Egypt later this year. It will see a focus on adaptation. And Egypt has already announced that water will be a particular area of attention, maybe not surprisingly. And then, of course, in March 2023, the first UN conference, we should say finally, the first UN conference on water since 1977, co-hosted by Tajikistan and the Netherlands. It will be a unique occasion to bring politicians, business, civil society together. And we hope that the conference can be a watershed moment. Apologies for using that pun, but the Dutch hosts use it a lot, and I think it's really appropriate. So it is really about giving water the place on the political agenda. It should have strengthening international governance, creating more partnerships. And for all of that, I hope the international water dialogues will play a major role and can certainly provide very important input. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Astrid. Some awesome opening words there, and very sound advice, especially giving the examples of the Danube as an example of something that has worked, and these examples can then be put further abroad outside of the European boundaries, and looking at how international cooperation can be done even between Europe and countries outside of Europe's borders. And with that, I think that's a brilliant introduction to Dr. Mamagloding Tegale, that it will be giving us some concrete examples, as you were mentioning before, Astrid, some of these concrete examples of international cooperation on water. To give you a bit of an introduction, Mamagloding is the head of the international and stakeholder engagement at the Water Research Commission of South Africa. Basically, her responsibilities there include leading the implementation of the Water Research Commission international stakeholder strategies, establishing and managing these strategic partnerships with local and other African and international partners. Prior to joining the WRC, Mamagloding was the director of the strategic partnerships at the South African Department of Science and Technology. And her role there was basically to promote South Africa's science, technology, and innovation excellence, and establish partnerships to leverage resources and to strengthen South Africa's science and technology capacities. Indeed, with that, she serves as an adjudicator for the South African Technology Top 100 Award and the National Science and Technology Forum Awards, which recognizes South African research and innovation. With that, I'm really looking forward to this talk. So over to you, Mamagloding.
Thank you very much, David, for that introduction. And good morning, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. Am I audible?
Loud and clear.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to be sure. So I'm going to be focusing on the South African Science, Technology and Innovation Cooperation with the EU. I'll start with the broad collaborations or partnerships that we're having before I dwell into the water partnerships that we are seeing. But please allow me to just before I start with my talk, introduce the institution that I'm coming from, which is the Water Research Commission of South Africa. I think it was important that I introduce our institution to you, because with the topic of today, you cannot win if you were to collaborate with South Africa without the Water Research Commission, if you want to be working on research, development and innovation in water and sanitation in South Africa. So we are the knowledge partner that you need to work with in your programs in South Africa. So the WRC was established in 1971 under the Water Research Act of South Africa. We report into the Ministry of Water and Sanitation, and the ministry's role is really to ensure that we have sound corporate governance in the country. Whatever work that we do, we engage actively with the citizens of South Africa. The most important one, to ensure that everyone has access to clean drinking water and dignified sanitation. And then also making sure that we protect our water resources, because if we don't, we'll end up not having these important resources. So the WRC was thus established in 1971 to make sure that we coordinate the cooperation, the communication between the water sector. We set the country's research agenda and the priorities that we should be focusing on. We stimulate the funding that needs to go into research and innovation to address the South African water and sanitation challenges, ensure that we promote effective transfer of information, knowledge, technologies that comes out of the work that is done by by our researchers and innovators, and also transforming the water sector and empowering the communities where we're doing our projects. And you should just note that as the Water Research Commission, we don't do research ourselves, but we are mostly the funder, and we fund really the most of the water research and innovation that happens in our country, not only focusing on academics. So we also have private sector applying for funding to us, where we work with them, and also some of the projects that we implement with the government. And as much as we report to the Ministry of Water and Sanitation, we also have a lot of work that we do with the Ministry of Science and Innovation, where we are the project management unit for two of their big platforms, where we accelerating the development and transfer of water technologies in the country. And the second platform looks at the sanitation innovations in the country. So the WRC is a project management unit for those programs. We, of course, also work with, for example, the Department of Health when we talk about water and health issues, the Department of Environment, Forestry and Fisheries when we're talking about issues of the ecosystem, biodiversity, and so forth. So our key impact areas as the Water Research Commission is food security, water security, energy security. We have also a very strong interest and promotion of water quality. You may know, I mean, most of you, that we still have challenges with regards to water quality in South Africa, and this includes both the resources and the drinking water quality. So we then prioritize this as one of the key strategic areas of the WRC. And when you look at the dignified sanitation in South Africa, we have a very unique kind of setup. There's a lot of communities that do not have piped system, for example. They do not have running water all the time, for example. Therefore, we need to look at solutions that can talk to such communities. And those are the communities that actually are normally marginalized and not serviced by our normal municipal services with regards to water and sanitation. Therefore, as a Water Research Commission, we make sure that we have this portfolio of dignified sanitation where we work with other partners. We have a big program that we're running with the Bill and Melinda Gates, the Department of Science and Innovation, the Water and Sanitation Department, to look at solutions that will really talk to those specific environmental challenges that our rural communities and the human settlements are facing. And of course, we then have a lot of cross-cutting issues which are highlighted on the right-hand side. I don't have to go through them one by one, I guess. Maybe just to flag on the one on climate change. Most of you would be aware that now in South Africa, we're having a very challenging times where we are hit by the floods in KZN area. It's not actually only in KZN, but it's more significant in the KZN area. So the WRC main core branches is the research and development branch, and then the innovation and impact branch. In the research and development, they really concentrate on launching annual calls, for example, to generate new knowledge, make sure that we build human capital and skills development in the water sector. And then what we do in the innovation and impact branch, which is where I'm coming from, we make sure that we take those knowledge that is coming from the R&D, we package it correctly, we look for partners to upscale them and facilitate uptake by the intended stakeholder groups within South Africa and beyond. And maybe to also mention that for South Africa, really, we have an international strategy, and Africa, our continent, it's a very core to our international strategy. So most of the work that we do, we make sure that we bring on board other key African partners to work with us. Because obviously most of the challenges that we are seeing are similar, especially if you look at regional focus, like the Southern Africa region. Whatever happened in South Africa, normally it will happen in the rest of the Southern Africa. So it's very good for us, and also due to the transboundary nature of our water resources, to work together with other African colleagues. So I thought of starting when now focusing on the EU partnership, start with this slide, and just a disclaimer that it may not be the final statistics. However, it will drive the message that I would like to share with you here today. And with the slides, I was trying to show on the left-hand side, the graph shows that South Africa is #1 African country in the FP7. Followed by Egypt, Morocco, Tunisia, and Kenya. And when you look at the horizon 2020, again, the same top 5 countries are still in the top 5, with South Africa being the one that still maintained the lead. But you will see Egypt and Morocco going down the line, and Kenya coming up the line there. With this, I'm just trying to show you that even though the framework program and the Horizon 2020 is very competitive framework programs, South Africa, with our expertise and our world-class research that we are having, we are still able to do very good in those kind of programs. And the last time I checked, which I stand also to be corrected, when we were looking also at the non-European countries, South Africa was ranked 5th after US, Russia, China, and India in FP7. So with this slide, I'm trying to show that South Africa is not only that developing countries that doesn't have expertise and can't lead any topic of interest in the water sector or any other science discipline, because as you can see here, this is our participation in all the framework program, but you would see that we are very strongly participating in the environment pillar, in the health and the bioeconomy areas. And obviously in the environment, that's where you'll find some of the water projects also that South Africa is participating in. So what made us be able to achieve such good results in the framework programs? And by the way, we started participating in the 4th framework program. However, we started having a more dedicated support promotional activities in South Africa through the Ministry of Science and Innovation to make sure that we up our numbers in the framework program with framework program 6, but we started in FP4. So when you look at what made us possible or what makes South Africa visible and still be able to contribute in these important programs of the EU is because we're having enabling national support and political support. I think the previous speaker spoke also about the political support there that they have and the partnerships with South Africa. So if you look at the national level, only, we have what we call the Trade Development Cooperation Agreement that was signed in 1999 and became fully effective in 2004. And with that agreement, I mean, most of you would also be aware that in 2016, then the SADC, which is the regional grouping that we belong to as South Africa, then entered into a economic partnership agreement with the EU. And then we have a strategic partnership as South Africa and the EU, which we then developed a joint action plan in 2007. And with that action plan, we're focusing not only on trade issues, but there's also political issues. There's policy dialogues that we're looking at there, where different government departments, sectoral department will liaise and collaborate with their counterpart in the EU to identify the work that we can do together as the two countries. And also this strategic partnership is governed by a summit, which is hosted by the President of South Africa, the President of the European Council, and the Commission, and the JCCs, Joint Cooperation Committees, which will then be those that are led by this departments. And in addition to that, strategic partnerships through the European Union delegation in South Africa, they have developed what they call or established a dialogue facility. This dialogue facility is a program that provides funding, technical assistance, and other support to strengthen the South Africa-EU policy dialogues. And we have seen a lot of leverage also in the water sector through this policy dialogue that exists. So this national prioritization, if I may call it, and support of the work that South Africa and the EU are doing is what made us be able to achieve these good results that you're seeing, and for us to be visible and contributing to the research and innovation in water and all the other science, technology, and innovation disciplines with Europeans. Then if I can come to the sectoral enabling environment and support, in 1996, the South African Department of Science and Technology, now called the Department of Science and Innovation, signed the Science and Technology Cooperation Agreement with DGRTD, and it started really being fully effective in 1997. And with this Science and Technology Agreement, that is actually that helped us to then up or open up the gates for South African researchers and innovators to start working with Europeans. For example, from FP6, as I've mentioned, through the ISA-STEP project, which is a bilat that was funded in FP6 to really mobilize and provide co-funding for South Africans that participate in the framework program. We also are very strongly participating in the COSE program, in the EDCTP, which is a clinical trial program of the EU, the Joint Research Center, Eureka, Eurostar. So most of the EU programs, you'll see South African participating. And this is because of the framework that is set by the two DGs from RTD and the Department of Science and Innovation when they meet on an annual basis to set the kind of agenda that they want to see with research between South Africa and the EU. The previous speaker also mentioned about the infrastructure investment program, for example. We also have a dialogue or sectoral partnership between the Ministry of Water and Sanitation, which is our ministry, together with the DG Environment and our Department of Water Affairs, Environment, Forestry and Fisheries in South Africa. So the Science and Technology has their own with DG RTD, and the Water and the Environment has their own with the Environment DG in the Commission. Of course, we also have a lot of multilateral and bilateral partnerships that are led through the national government departments, which the WRC and the other government entities support this department in implementing. And lastly, maybe to mention that through the sectoral support, especially of the Department of Science and Innovation, we were able to secure what we call the sector budget support. And this is a program that is given to the South African government to try and manage projects, support projects that alleviate poverty through research and innovation. So as you can see, I think South Africa, it was not a mistake or luck that we are doing well in this competitive research and innovation programs of the EU, but it's because we have a very strong and stable national and sectoral enabling environment that allows us to then do all that good work. And then I also wanted to share with you some of the flagship programs, specifically in the water, the work that we have done before. And for example, Water Europe, WNB has been one of the partners in some of the projects there. So I'll just touch a bit on them. This project have a website which has all the information that you may need, or you can also contact me post this session to provide more information if you are interested. So let's start with the Afri-Alliance. As I've mentioned, in the WRC and South Africa as a whole, we take our other African partnerships very key and important to the work that we're doing. And we know that when we work together as a continent, we'll be able to address this similar, in most of the cases, water challenges that we're experiencing. So Afri-Alliance is one of those big programs that we ran with not only South Africa, but we had like 5 African countries and 5 European countries. Europeans were Belgium, France, Sweden, Spain, and the Netherlands, while in Africa we had South Africa, Ghana, Botswana, Burkina Faso, and Cote d'Ivoire. And the main aim of this program, funded by Age 2020, was to prepare Africa for climate change resilience. And what we did in this project, we did a lot of innovation roadshows, workshops, conferences to try and use a bottom-up approach where we identifying the challenges in Africa with regards to climate change and how we can then work together to build resilience. We have funded about 10 action groups, and these action groups are really demand-driven. We put together teams of European and African, which were working together to either develop tools or to promote uptake of specific tools within their environments. We developed triple sensor forecasting models, which is also an online tool that is available. A lot of innovation, social innovation fact sheets we've developed based on the challenges that we have identified when we did our bottom-up workshops and consultations with different stakeholders in the African and European continent. So, and we also had obviously innovation bridges where we were bringing together solutions, trying to provide a platform where people could be aware of the solutions that exist that could help us address these challenges that we identified in Africa. And then, so the online platform I've mentioned, they're available, and all this material that we've produced is available on the Afri-Alliance website. Although the program ended last year, 2021, the knowledge portal is still available and accessible. Another one that I would like to touch on is the Water JPI, which you probably all are familiar on. South Africa and other Africans, I think one more African partner is a partner in Water JPI. And for us as a South Africa, we decided to be a partner in Water JPI because it was helping us not to only access expertise in Europe, builds capacity within our own, but it also helped us to set the agenda of the calls that will be launched. So Water JPI launched annual calls, and as a funding partner, you have the possibility, or you have the advantage to sit in the team that works on the topics of this call that will come out. And then between the Department of Science and Innovation and the WRC, we were then the co-funders of the South African parties in this Water JPI calls. I think in total, there were like 7 Water JPI calls, and South Africa participated in 6 of them. We have over 14 projects that we have co-funded with the Ministry of Science and Innovation. Our experts were sitting in the 2 knowledge hubs that we established through Water JPI to try and facilitate collaboration, relationship between the EU and the Water JPI members, which is the knowledge hub for the contamination of emerging concerns and the SDGs. We were sitting also in many of the review panels for the projects of the Water JPI. So for us, AfriAlliance and Water JPI are 2 different programs, but they really serve a very good purpose for us, and we will continue in such programs going in the future because they provide us with a real meaning of a strategic partnership where we all equal, we're working together to set the agenda of these platforms, but also making sure that they respond also to the needs of our local people. And then the third program that I would like to touch upon is the South Africa EU project that was funded by the Dialogue Facility that I've mentioned. So I really liked what the Dialogue Facility did last year. Actually in 2020, when we were hit by COVID, very quick response and trying to see how they can mobilize partnership to help people really survive and be able to still operate within COVID. So they launched a call, a COVID special call, and we responded to it as the Water Research Commission, Water JPI, supported by the Danish Embassy, the French Embassy, the Department of Water and Sanitation, and the SADC subsidiary called WaterNet. So we put a program together that looked at how the EU and the SADC region WASH stakeholders have responded to COVID and how COVID-19 has affected implementation of our research programs and also capacity building program. A very good project just concluded now, and we managed to produce a position paper for the SADC as to how we can build capacity so that we are better prepared for future pandemic. Actually, David was one of our experts who looked at the EU side of the study as to how the EU stakeholders managed to still do what they need to do during COVID. And we also produced a policy paper. So the project, we are now doing the final reporting, and the information would be available if you are interested. And lastly, just to mention that we're looking forward to the Water for All partnership, which is just recently approved. And what we also like about this one is Water for All also talks about one of the key issues that I believe are important for partnerships going forward with between South Africa and the EU, the issue of technological and innovative solutions that really talk to the local needs. We've done a lot of work, I think, through all the other platforms to bring new knowledge, research knowledge, tools and guidelines, for example, but I still feel like there's a gap with regards to now stepping it up a bit and working together to see how we can facilitate uptake of tech and innovation solutions, and also scaling them, the work that has been already done by South Africa or even the EU partners. And then this brings me to the slide that talks about what I think we should be focusing on going forward with the South Africa EU water partnerships. So the key word there is really partnership for impact. The time for us to do good research, pilot, it's really gone. We need to see impact of the research. There's a lot of money that is invested in this program, a lot of time and resources. So we need to make sure that what we do is really serving the needs of the people at the local level. It must be demand driven. It must be bottom up. So let's stop this thing of coming up with what needs to be done from the top down, because sometimes it's really not aligned to the policy and the needs of the people. I think we also need to focus on programs or projects that will empower the communities that we do in this project, and especially the communities that are not serviced, so that they are able to then take up this project and make sure that there's sustainability. I think, as I've mentioned, Water for All will be looking a bit on seeing how we can do demonstration activities between Europe and the partners of Water for All, including South Africa. So it will really take care of this facilitating scaling up and uptake of innovative solutions. But I think even other possible partnerships should also really focus on this element of scaling up the techs and innovation, demonstrating them to see that they're adaptable to the environment, so that we can see the impact. And then also just a question that came to my mind was, what value could we derive from the EU researchers and innovators actually participating in South African programs? Because you normally look at how South Africans can contribute to the EU program. So reciprocity for me is also key and important. And I think it's about time that we start sharing our programs and opening them up to EU participant, but with your own funds, of course. And this kind of research topics, I'm almost done, David, that research topics that I think, especially from the Water Research Commission side, that we think the Europeans can add value in water and sanitation is, firstly, in South Africa, as much as we are close to 2030 with regards to SDG 6, there is unfortunately still a lot of people that don't have access to clean drinking water and sanitation. And there are many reasons for that. One of them is the one that I've mentioned of not having services from the municipality, no piped waters, no sanitation, no water at all in some of the cases. So we really need to come up with projects that could help us service this vulnerable community so that they are also having access of this human right, which is drinking water and dignified sanitation. And then climate change and extreme weather events is also one of the key topics or key strategic areas in the WRC that we would like to work with Europeans on. A very good example is what is currently happening, as I've given the example in our KZN region. So we need to really find a way in which we have early warning system and we have ways in which we manage this climate change and extreme weather events that hit us such that it's not leading into really disasters. The issues of water quality, and this talks to both water quality at resource level. You may be aware also, because it's been in the news, our dams sometimes are really polluted with wastewater. Our drinking water quality is not at good in all the provinces, for example. So we still need a lot of work, research, and innovations that could help us to address this issue of water quality. The green economy, and of course, digitization of the water sector. I always cannot pronounce this. The whole water sector, from the water services institutions, really, how can we make everything digital so that we have improved services? And lastly, what I think could stand in our way of improving the partnerships in water and sanitation between South Africa and the EU and other partners, of course, is firstly misalignment of priorities and funding cycle. You know, sometimes you come with funding maybe from the EU, but things have to be rushed because you're working on funding cycle. And as you know, research sometimes takes long really to come up with good results. So sometimes funding cycles are not aligned and they're really not giving us the opportunity to do what we need to do. But the misalignment of priorities, I mean, it doesn't help if there's a very big pot of millions coming to South Africa from Europe or any other country. If what that money has to be used for is not really aligned with what we need, our own challenges, our own priorities, then it won't be very useful. Insufficient budget, sometimes there is a co-funding required from South Africa, and not all the time we do have such funding. So it can be one of the stumbling blocks at points. There is a lot of good projects happening between EU and South Africa, but you find that as soon as the project funding ends, it ends. And we need to find a way in which we sustain this project even beyond the project funding cycle so that the value continues and the impact continues. It doesn't die when the project funding dies. Just like any other country, Europe will prioritize countries that they want to work with. Sometimes your prioritization can affect regional integration. Same with us. Sometimes our prioritization can affect regional integration outside South Africa. The issue of brain drain is self-explanatory. Due to better opportunities, sometimes we do lose a lot of good researchers and knowledge producers in South Africa. And lastly, the issue of competition. So it's not only Europe, obviously. obviously that works with South Africa because it's interested in working with South Africa. There's many other regions, and depending on your alignment of your priorities for your funding, as I've said, it will then make you either the best or the second best partner for South Africa with regards to water and sanitation. So this is what I wanted to share with you today. It's really about that there is good work already happening, but we can still do more to ensure that we really get your contribution with regards to improving access to water and sanitation in our country, and being better prepared and building a resilient water sector through your partnership, technical assistance, and effort that you can provide to our country. I will end here, David, and thank you very much. If you would like to engage with me going forward to get to know more about the South African water and sanitation sector, or wanting to work with us, please do contact me on those email address. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mama Claudine. To be honest, I could listen to you pretty much all day. It's really, really interesting insights there, and showing the real impact that the collaboration can have, not only on the water side, but on the entire sector. And you can see how research and innovation and technology advancements have happened thanks to this type of international cooperation. And then this is something that you were extending to the rest of Africa. And as you correctly mentioned, that once South Africa moves in one direction, it tends to bring a lot of other African countries with it. So a real lighthouse example there of what international cooperation can do. And specifically when we start to look at the changing climate, how the cooperation on water issues will become even more vital. So thank you so much, Mama Claudine, for those insights, and we'll stay with us in case we do have any questions that come up. Please feel free to ask your questions in the chat here as a webinar participant, or indeed if you're listening on the LinkedIn Live, you can also ask your questions there. We have a question that has come in from the LinkedIn Live feed. And it's asking if is knowledge transfer and exchange programs also part of the help provided by EU and India? And I think the answer to that question comes up really nicely within the next panel when we start to talk about the EU-India partnership, which will form part of this panel discussion. So with that, I would like to actually introduce Murray Beardler. Murray is going to be running this panel discussion. He will introduce the speakers to you. He will engage with them. He will allow them some space to develop a little bit their ideas, to present some of the current initiatives and current policies that are happening within this space. And then Murray will engage with them just to ask a few questions. And that'll also give you the opportunity as participants and those that are viewing online, that you can indeed ask your questions to the panel, and Murray will try and work those into the panel discussions. Murray is a BSc by trade. He has a BSc in Geography, Geohydrology, and an MA in International Politics. He has more than 25 years of experience in development and humanitarian assistance in water and sanitation and environmental health. He works a lot with NGOs, the European Commission, and various UN agencies. He works in water science and research, specifically on the climate sector policy, human capacity development within Africa's water sector. He has lectured in hydrology, groundwater, and resource and climate policy, as well as WASH-related issues at Rose University for WEDEC, where incidentally I did my master's, and at NOAA Emergency Masters modules. He's also currently the team leader of the EU Water Facility supporting DG INPA, and is a senior associate with the Adelphi think tank on climate, environment, and development. And with that, over to you, Murray.
Thank you very much, David. Thank you very much also for Water Europe for this invitation and opportunity to facilitate an interesting panel discussion on international cooperation and development. The panel session today will be with 4 panelists from a wide range of experience, geographic representation, and institutional representation. We'll be presenting them shortly. Each panelist will present on their topic and their sector of discussion. And after that, we'll have a tour de table, a round table with some specific questions. Meanwhile, while the panelists are presenting their sessions, I invite the members of the audience to submit into the chat box and to David any questions you might have on the panelists' presentations, on also any questions from the opening words that we've heard already. Right, the first panelist I'd like to present to you is Arno de Vance, who is working with the European Commission. He's a team leader for Water, Environment, Sustainable Development, Sustainable Natural Resources Unit F2, DG INPA International Partnerships. Arno, you have 10 minutes, more or less, to please present on examples of international partnerships. Okay, so Arno, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Murray. Good morning, everybody. I will try to share my screen as I have a short presentation. If it works. Okay. Can you confirm it if it is working well?
Yes, we can see it well. It's not quite in presentation mode, but we can see it.
Not in presentation mode. So let's shift to presentation mode. Here it is. That's fine.
It's still the same, but you can continue like this if you want, or if you have two screens, maybe it's easier to shift the screen across.
Like this? Is it fine?
And no, it's still the same, but
it's a bit strange. Stop sharing. Sorry, I will find a way.
You have to have your presentation open, so you have it open.
Yeah, it is.
Yes, and with the share button, with the yes, you should.
Here is
okay.
it open?
No, now it's still with the notes. Now you need to go to the slideshow settings up in that top.
Here?
Not that. You should have, but I don't see because of my screen.
Sorry. Display setting here, swap presenter here. Is it okay now? No.
That's something like that. Yes, you need to swap to presenter style, but also you need to have. Yes, this is perfect.
Okay, that's it.
Thank you.
Okay, so sorry for the for the hiccups. And I have to go back to the first slide, sorry. So I'm going to talk a bit about what we are now. Sorry. Oh, yeah. So what we are planning a bit, as you may know, we have been in a programming cycle very recently for the 2021-2027 financial framework. And we have been handling very recently also an exercise with the discussion on the Council conclusions on EU external action on water. So this has led to a set of new initiatives or continuation of ongoing initiatives that have been confirmed for the future. And so I'm going to try to present a bit where we are today with this financing framework and policy framework that will drive our work for the next 6 years. So first, I just wanted to come back a bit maybe on what Madame Shoemaker I'm not going to come back to lengthily on that because Madame Shoemaker already said it quite a lot. So how far the EU is a natural global leader in water. So we have heard about the importance of the network of water operators and private sector actors that we have in Europe. We have heard about the Water Framework Directive and the unique knowledge of the European Union in terms of transborder water management, for instance. But we are also to recall that we have an old water diplomacy tradition that's for our external cooperation is extremely important. And we are a champion of the human right for safe drinking water and sanitation with some European Union guidelines for this human right that were adopted in 2019 and are extremely interesting in to drive a bit how we are working towards the more vulnerable populations. So we spend quite a lot of money in terms of ODA, but also we have EIB, that is probably the biggest lender worldwide for the water sector. So we see that we have a very, very strong leadership globally. I'm not going back to present this one. I mean, as water is part of this very basic biosphere part of the world that is supporting all the different SDGs and all our economies. And so I'm sure that you are very familiar with that, so I'm not going to come back on it. And I will come directly to our cooperation. So the Council conclusion on water in EU external actions that were adopted at the end of last year are putting in particular a few concepts quite forward for our future cooperation. So in particular, they talk about the humanitarian development peace nexus, putting a lot of emphasis on the importance of transboundary water management and the importance of collaboration between the countries and partnerships, not only between the countries, but also between the stakeholders. They really put back the focus on the need to have an urgent action on water because of the very steady degradation of the water biodiversity, the fresh waters, but also because of the very important and problematic financing gap we have in the sector. So they call for more investments, they call for experience sharing, in particular using EU experience and sharing it internationally, including innovation. They call for continued attention to the human right for water access, sanitation and hygiene. And they push for better multilateralism with reinforcement of the UN system for water, but also support the globalization of the Water Convention or support to global knowledge sharing initiatives. So in line with that, we have a few pillars for actions that are around WASH, the resource management and preservation with transboundary water management, and the global steering with this multilateralism. Our means of actions are around the global, regional, and national, with envelopes at all these different levels under the Global Europe instruments on DKI for the ones that prefer this crazy name. So it is complemented and includes also the European Fund for Sustainable Development Plans, and we'll come back to it in the coming slides. So at the level of our global programming, we have been developing a global challenge program that is well in line with the Council conclusions on EU external action, and that is focusing its work around three main streams of actions. The first main stream is the SDG 6 acceleration framework. We really want to further support the UN waters and the UN system in delivering on this SDG 6 acceleration framework that gives a lot of space to capacity development and coordination between the different stakeholders. Then we have a second mainstream of activities around the globalization of the UNESCO Water Convention, with a strong support to this initiative, and that should be complemented by the actions at the national and regional level, and we'll further see how, and notably with global exchanges related to knowledge from basin organizations. So we want to support these external international exchanges, as we believe that there is a lot of know-how that we have in Europe that we can much more efficiently project outside of Europe to support this ambition of the globalization of the UNESCO Water Convention, but not only also to support effective and efficient the development of effective and efficient basin organizations in the countries, because we know that it is from there that the actions are coming and that can bring the change that is needed. Then after, we are going to continue to support the water operators partnerships with GOPA and under the EU WOLL program. And this is something that we have seen with a development with a lot of interest, and on which we want to commit further support, and that will come in complement to the investment agenda that I will further talk about just after, a bit later. Sorry. Then we have the programming at the country and regional level. So we try to see complementarity between what is being programmed at the country level, at the regional level, and at the global level. And we have seen that in the programming, we are around 60 countries worldwide that will have activities financed through their country programs. And 20 of these countries, more than 20 actually, because there are a number of countries that I didn't count that are in the neighborhood country also. And so more than 20 countries have a specific sector dedicated to water. So we see that there is a continued interest for this sector. And we have a good cover of high water stress countries, such as in the Maghreb, in small island development states, or Southern Africa. So this is complemented by a regional focus and a few Team Europe initiatives that will try to support what the countries have identified as priorities. So at the country level, the main priorities are support to WASH, mostly large-scale, large-scale WASH, but also basic services. And many countries also included integrated approaches, having WASH and the sustainable resource management of the resource. And this is something that is a bit new. We didn't have such integrated approaches as much such integrated approaches in our country programs in the past, and we see that there is a difference there that will need some innovation and some support from the research community to find very good ways to have this concretely happening on the ground. And we see more and more the ambition to use nature-based solutions to solve some of the problems related to WASH and wastewater treatment. We see the development of the link between WASH and resilience, for instance, with a lot of also focus on climate change and the impact of climate change on WASH activities, etc. And then after at the regional level, as Madame Shoemaker mentioned, we are developing Team Europe initiatives because we think that a Team Europe approach is very important for the future of our activities. And in this context, we have been supporting in particular 2 Team Europe initiatives that are now flagships of our programming. And this is a transboundary water management in Africa and another one on water, energy, climate in Central Asia. Then after we will continue to support, for instance, the Africa Centers of Excellence, as we believe that this will be extremely important to support the dynamics that we see at the country level and regional level. So a few words on the TEI, on transboundary water in Africa, that will mobilize, like Madame Shoemaker said, more than 420 million euros for the region. We are working with 8 member states and EIB on the development of this TI with a 2-layer program, a continental level program, and a subset of water basin programs. So at the continental level, we will have a support to the centers of excellence, like I mentioned. We will have support to collaboration between basin organizations with the HAB, or ANBO, sorry, the African Network of Basin Organizations. And we will have also some support at the continental level to the African Union and AMCAO to see how they can support the basin organizations in their ambitions at the local level. So basically, we want to create, we want to support Africa in their ambition to create really an integrated approach for transboundary water management in the continent. So you can see here the different objectives that we have for this program that are mentioned here. So you can see that with the member states, we are covering most of Africa with our current programs. That's the current picture, but this will be enlarged with new programs that will be coming in. And we can see that bringing together all the European member states that are working on this together with the European Union, we have a much more integrated, a broader capacity to work on the subject and to increase exchange of experience, to increase collaboration between the different organizations, so to reach the objectives that we have. Then I would like to talk about a second very important priority for us, that is the financing of this human right, that is water access. And I just wanted to highlight two things that are crucial for us. The first one is that we have a huge financial gap in the water sector. And we have extremely slow uptake of the private sector, for instance, and even public investments in the water sector. And we have a huge gap in financing that we really need to tackle, because as we can see on these two graphs, in the LDCs in particular, these two graphs are for the LDCs, the least developed countries. We see that both the access to drinking water services and the access to basic sanitation services is increasing in rates, but in numbers, we have more and more people that do not have access to these basic services. So and this is even more striking when you distinguish rural or urban, because you realize that the urban sector has a huge increase in terms of number of people that do not have access. So we see that there is a huge gap there, and we need to bring together innovation, the private sector and the public sector to invest in this in the water sector. So this is why we have been working with the European Fund for Sustainable Plus to develop more and more water financing through EIB lending and guarantees operation, for which we want more policy alignment with what the EU delegations are focusing on in their programs. So meaning that we have more than 50 EU delegations, between 50 and 60, that could mobilize EIB lending and guarantees according to their programs. And then we have been pushing to have a window on water under the open architecture of this European Fund for Sustainable Development to attract new types of financing, like the Urban Water Catalytic Fund that could be financed there, like the Climate Investor Tool, like other funding mechanisms with pension funds or commercial banks, etc., that are traditionally not mostly very interested by the agriculture sector, the water sector, but are financing a lot of other sectors. And we want to attract them. And for that, we need to have this innovative financing.
Arnaud, will we be able to wrap up soon? Over?
Yeah. I'm wrapping up soon. Finally, we want to upscale adaptation funding. So we believe that it's really important in the future, because as we have seen, EIB now is indicating that 50% of their portfolio will have to be climate compatible. And so it means that all our water financing will need to be also in this line. So I wanted to say a very, very quick word on this Climate Investor 2 program that is really interesting in terms of innovation. So we see by bringing in the private sector, sometimes we can facilitate the development of innovation, and we need to have this collaboration. And here with this Climate Investor 2 financing mechanisms, we see that, for instance, we are having some investment in solar water solutions with decentralized solar treatment entities that are quite innovative for Africa. We are using bio-to-energy initiatives, nature depth swaps, containerized treatment for ballast water in ports, etc., etc. So it's really interesting that how we can innovate through this. Finally, I wanted to say one word on the fact that water is very cross-sectoral. So we cannot unlock positive change if we don't look at all these different streams that are conflict risk analysis, human rights, innovative, digital, etc., etc. And we have to mainstream also water in other sectors, and this is something on which we need also to have more innovation, how to give water access, wash access in schools, wash access in health centers, etc. There we need to really find new ideas in order to do that more efficiently. So that's all for me, and so thank you very much for your attention. And sorry I've been a bit long, but I think we have a very interesting new set of program, and I hope that we can all work together to deliver on this program, as we really need to have this collaboration between Europe and developing countries to upscale and to reach results. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Arnold, for that. Especially for outlining the future for finance and investment, the opportunities, the possibilities, but also the thematics, so that participants and partnerships of interest have an idea of what the potential agenda is with the EU programming that they can collaborate with. All right, so thank you very much for that. Let's move on to the second panelist now. Second panelist we have is Mr. Almo Abadi from the Union for the Mediterranean. And Mr. Abadi is currently managing director of the UFM, Union for Mediterranean Secretariat. He's responsible for water policies and development, and he works closely with the Water and Environment Division at the UFM Secretariat. So, Mr. Abadi, please, can you give us some, speak on your work and give us some examples of cooperation in the Mediterranean zone? And if you can, try and keep as close as possible to the 10 minutes. Over to you, Mr. Abadi. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maury, for having us with this very great panel to discuss issues related how we can overcome the challenges in the water sector internationally. But my role will be focusing on how we cooperate within this sector in the Mediterranean region, and to give a clue about the Mediterranean region that we are working on is a political framework that brings together the 27 EU member states plus 15 non-EU member states who are North African, East Mediterranean, including Turkey and Western Balkan. Those are the 42 member states that are trying to overcome the water challenges. Besides the UFM Secretariat, we work on all other sectors, but my role is to work on the water sector. And we work on multi-level approaches. Among them, the first to start with is how to bring together multi-level stakeholder approaches, including governmental and non-governmental, civil society, into the unique platforms that we are doing in the Mediterranean region. The work that we are promoting for based on a political declaration. So the Union for the Mediterranean recently, especially in 2017, had introduced a new ministerial declaration that give us a mandate in order to work with our member state and all international actors on 4 thematic areas. The first one is water, energy, food, ecosystem nexus. The second one, water and climate adaptation, WASH, as well as the water employment migration. And how to link all those 4 thematic areas. We call them the UFM Water Policy Framework of Action 2030 with innovative financing approaches, which is not limited to enhance the North-South cooperation, but also to enhance also South-South and diagonal cooperation, and to focus on the internal revenue of the water sector by influencing the right policies among the member states. And here is I can snapshot how the cooperation is taking place within our member state. These working group that we are developing, they are working with the ownership of the member states, led by the European Union, DG Environment, and also contribution from different DG, including the DG NEAR, and also from the South country mandated Jordan to be the co-president in this regard. But when it comes to the practical point of view, each task force, each thematic area had one leader from the North and one leader from the South, and this is based on to enhance the ownership. And they develop based on feedback from their local level, how to work together in order to enhance the cooperation and to sustain the water sector. For an example, the water financial strategy built by the Union for the Mediterranean member state, including the development agencies, IFI, as well as a contribution from all riparian countries to the Mediterranean region, in highlighting the best practices and how individual countries had overcome the issues related to the water revenue and the non-revenue water issue, how they bolster the role of the private sector into this important sector. Other countries showed example how they cooperate best within the EU-funded programs. And with this, we create this hub in order to exchange experience and to avoid lesson and to bring lesson learned to the member state. And this is a very important part to cooperate and the effective cooperation that we can promote, considering the fact, unfortunately, in the region where we are working, the transboundary water resource management is recognized as an important, but unfortunately, there is still no forward-looking approach toward implementing one of the convention, or as in the European geopolitical sphere, that UNECE is the best, and we are trying our best to start promoting that our member state from the south to enter into this convention, but still we are not having the runway in order to kick off processes based on the convention. So what we are doing is to keep this cooperation among the member states with the variable geometry approach. And so far, we can confirm that this variable geometry approach is working well, especially when building partnership at the overall approach between the 42 member states, as well as to zoom in to have some sub-regional cooperation between member states, especially on the technology issues related to the fund and the private sector engagement, and how to bring together the donor and credited for the infrastructure development. This cooperation still young, need to be improved by bringing more political wills in the region in order to always put the water as the top of the agenda of the political processes. Now we are seeing a very great opportunity from our side that this upcoming UN 23 Water Conference to round a new approaches internationally for the water cooperation, as well as to highlight the need in order to invest more on the hotspot area. The Mediterranean region, as you know, it's not only politically a hotspot area, but also from a climate point of view, it is the second hotspot according to the medical report, according to the World Bank report, according for all scientific-based approach reporting mechanism. In the North Pole is the glacier melting. In the Mediterranean region, the climate change is obvious by rising the temperature, but also less water availability. And this condition is ringing a bell and alarm for all water people, as well as this alarm should be moved to the top political level in order to understand that no development, no security, no peace, nothing if there is no water. And absolutely, water is life, but water is a socio-economic development. Water is linked to all our activity, all our portfolio that we are promoting, from green economy, blue economy, economic development, urban development, as well as issue related to the human development. With this approach, we try to focus on where is the member states are really lacking some efforts. So we start looking at a new policy influence into the national policies of our member state, and how to do them by going and doing peer reviews into the issue related to the water financial sustainability of water sector from country to country. Why we are doing so? Because we understand that we cannot enforce a unified regulation for the Mediterranean region, but we need to influence one that work nationally, as well as it will bolster a regional cooperation in the Mediterranean region. This is what we call it, respecting the specificity of each member state. Here I am talking about the specificity not related to the environmental specificity, because I can confirm that all the 22 member states around the Mediterranean so far, due to the climate change, they have the same environmental condition when it comes to the issues related to the lack of water resources and the water stress in the Mediterranean region. But we figure out that there is a need to shift in the mentality on the way how to tackle the water issues. At political level, unfortunately, many of politicians, they think that the water sector is a sector that dented the wallet of the Ministry of Finance. Meanwhile, if we manage it on a different approach and follow a new innovative approach, we know that water is the main contributor to the GDP, but also there were a need to highlight how to do the jobs and employment and entrepreneurial out of the water sector, considering the fact that many of young people, especially in the south, that they start thinking either to migrate to the cities in order to find jobs, or to migrate across the sea to the north in order also to seek for more economic opportunity. Now the effort from the water sector, based on the evidence-based, that we need to bolster the entrepreneurial and how this nexus between different sectors should be bolstered at the whole government approach in order to design a very bankable or a very economic vital business model in order to do a good entrepreneurial into the water sector. And with this, we start implementing projects to, we call it showcase or prove the concept that from a wastewater treatment plant, we can produce more water by tertiary treatment using solar panel, and then we shift the farming and the crop pattern into more high value crops. And these examples are running now in Palestine, in Jordan, in Tunisia, within a funded project from the Swedish Development Corporation, as well as we are labeling another project in the process to be labeled, which is AFD funded.
Mr. Abadi,
Yes.
will you be able to wrap up soon, please?
Yes, of course.
Sorry to interrupt, but please
Just give
continue.
me 2 minutes, and then I will wrap. This project is to bring together, funded from AFD, refugees from Syria, from Iraq, from who's based on Jordan, Lebanon, and to create home-based businesses from the water and environmental sector. And this project is going to be highlighted next Water Expert Group meeting that will be held on the 23rd of May in Amman, in order to replicate as much as possible this project into other parts of the southern Mediterranean, and also give a good idea, which is here is another another pattern of cooperation to the development cooperation, that we give them guidance where also to invest their money, where to spend their money in order to achieve their objective. The last minute, I will be speaking about how we think in the future, how to institutionalize this entrepreneurial activity with the young people. So we start engaging with the young based organization around the Mediterranean, and now they come up with an idea, excellent idea, that they call it Intramed, entrepreneurial system, non-governmental organization, to bring together all national actors at entrepreneurial in order to build a platform for exchange of experience and networking with the international community who are working on this entrepreneurial in the water renewable energy sector. And this will be our maybe in June, we will launch this Intermed into a large scale to bring the young people working in the aspects and create jobs within the water sector and to work on their future, because the future belongs to the young people. And the Mediterranean region, we have more than 60% of its citizens are considered young people. 30% of them are jobless, unemployed. And if we wanted to enhance the water cooperation in the Mediterranean and to make it meaningful as a contributor to GDP, we have to invest a lot on this entrepreneurial for the youth in order that they create their jobs and build their future. Mauri, thank you very much for giving us this opportunity, and we are ready to collaborate and cooperate with the Water Europe as a platform, even for the future, to prepare ourselves as a region to contribute to the UN 2030 conference. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Abadi. Very, very interesting presentation, highlighting issues among the in the Mediterranean. And I think it's very important, the point that you made, that although, for example, in the issues and challenges of climate change around the Mediterranean, the climate change issues in the north and climate change issues in the south are pretty much geoclimatically similar. But the specificities of country by country, their political history, landscape is very different. And that is where you apply this respect of the specificity. So, wishing you good luck on that. So thank you very much. We'll move on to our next representative, Birgit Vogel. Birgit, I have here just a small little summary. Birgit is a water resources manager, brings a long experiences, multicultural, international work experience, largely on river basin management for over more than 20 years. She's worked geographically across many regions, including Europe, India, Southeast Asia, China, Africa, and the South Caucasus, covering many transboundary river basins, which are very much of interest in the topic. So Bridget, we'd like you to please present your work on examples on overview of the EU-India Water Partnership and enlighten us on that subject. And your 10 minutes starts now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Murray, for giving me the floor. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to everybody, wherever you are in the world currently. And thanks to the organizers for inviting me to this panel and its discussion, where I will where I will provide an overview on the India-EU Water Partnership and also outline successes and potential challenges and also failures. So I think we all agree that international and interstate water cooperation is really essential. Managing waters, but of course also transboundary or interstate rivers together or in partnerships is of course quite a big challenge, but in the end the rewards are big, the added values are rewarding, and ideally it brings countries and states together. Before I go into the India-EU Water Partnership, I want to set the scene with emphasizing again that the majority of water in the world is not accessible for human use. It's only less than 2.5% that are actually fresh waters, and most of it is found in glaciers and in ice. In addition, water is distributed, as we know, very and extremely unequally over the world, and that's a challenge. In addition, we are facing climate change pressures, and increased water stress and extreme events, including flood, events and drought events. So this causes the latter point, water scarcity and water demand has become a big challenge for the entire world. So it is very important to ensure sustainable water use, also ecosystem health, and to prevent conflicts, of course. And therefore, the cooperation beyond administrative borders regarding water, I think, is more important than ever before. And that also includes transboundary and interstate river basin management. So let me get to the India-EU Water Partnership, which is a young partnership that actually aims to strengthen EU-India cooperation in the water sector, of course, and to improve the water policy dialogue between India and the EU. What we are addressing in the IWP are key water priorities in the EU and of course in India, and I will come to this in a bit more detail in a moment. Let me just introduce the IWB briefly. I mentioned that already. It's a young partnership. This means it came into place in 2016 through a memorandum of understanding between India and the EU on water cooperation. And besides the strategic policy side, there is also importantly technical implementation. Since 2017, the India-EU Water Partnership Action is co-financed by the European Union and by the German Development Corporation, and we are now implementing the second phase, which will go until end September 2023. In the beginning of the partnership, it was, of course, important to structure the partnership, to get EU member states on board, to get the Indian partners on board, to see how the cooperation is going to work, and in particular what we are going to cooperate on. In the beginning, there was a broad spectrum of activities, 9 priority areas, which got now streamlined into 4 work areas, and the cooperation is really very targeted. The work areas are river basin management, so merging EU approaches with Indian approaches. It's the assessment of e-flows, also based on EU experience and merging with the Indian approaches, then irrigation and the efficient use of water. And in addition, a very important topic regarding actually fighting water scarcity, which is the safe reuse of treated water. In addition, it is very important to flag business opportunities for EU companies in India and for partnering with Indian companies and finding entry points into India and the water sector. So I was asked to present on success stories. I will do this first before I come to the challenges. And I think I can really say that there has been a very successful merging of EU strategies and processes with the Indian approaches. We've been going through the last 5-6 years through a joint learning, ranging, of course, from successes to failures on the EU and on the Indian side. But in the end, the exchange and cooperation is extremely positive. We learned by practical implementation that river basin management is definitely applicable in India. Together with our Indian partners, we initiated the river basin management cycle aligned with the philosophy of the EU Water Framework Directive. And in this sense, we developed a river basin management plan for the Tapi Basin, which is like 80,000 square kilometers, based on this river basin management cycle. And this plan is describing for the entire river basin that is shared by 3 states, the water risks aligned to 5 key water management issues relating to water quality, water quantity, but also sand mining. The impressive thing was that the Indian government, for this purpose, called a Tapi committee into place, which is based on the same setup like European river basin organizations. And this Tapi committee brought like all the 3 Tapi states around the table to work together and to actually succeed with the European experts to bring this management plan together. And there's a strong desire now to upscale the very approach, and this is currently undertaken. E-flows. I mentioned beforehand, there are high demands in water. You all know this for India, and the pressure is extremely high. There's a lot of water scarcity, and therefore ensuring minimum flows in rivers is a priority for the government. Tackling on one hand the insurance of water use, but also ensuring ecological sustainability. We developed the guidance document, how to implement e-flows assessment. One successful activity was that through a very comprehensive consultation process involving all kinds of ministries in India, we were able, together with the Ministry of Water, to actually develop a policy framework for the safe reuse of treated water, which was called by the minister really a very successful need of the minute. And this framework should now guide the states in India to come to actually develop policies that are coherent all across India and causing less implementation challenges. Of course, we were facing a lot of challenges as well. I rather like to call it challenge than failure. In general, we can say that it's also valid for India that, of course, there are coordination issues between the authorities and overlapping mandates. I can give an example. The National Mission for Clean Ganga, for example, is responsible to clean the Ganga, to manage it, but the data are collected by other authorities and the information sharing doesn't always work so well. There are coordination issues between the central, so the national level, and the state level. The water rights are with the states, and the central level sometimes has limited influence to actually allocate water and control the water use. And this is a challenge when it comes to tackling water scarcity. Irrigation efficiency, of course, a big issue in India, and we are working together with the Indian partners on this topic. When it comes to challenges between the EU and India, I would like to mention bringing in EU business into India is quite a challenge. The difficulties lie on both sides, difficult tendering processes in India, and also the validation for technical innovation is quite difficult. And sometimes we have the impression there's also sometimes not the right or the right endurance from the EU businesses. So another challenge is the lack of capacities when it comes to using technologies and maintaining them over time, and the use of data for well-informed decision-making in water management. So I want to come to the conclusion here. In general, I think I can really say, and I'm very happy for this for both sides, EU and India, that there's a very strong cooperation will in place. And we all know where there's a will, there's also a success. So the technical implementation in general has been tackled jointly and successfully, and flows very well into the policy development. I think we can say that the India-EU Water Partnership became a very strong cooperation platform between the EU and India, and we are very much looking forward to intensify this cooperation over the upcoming years. Thank you to everybody for the attention, and back to you, Murray.
Thank you very much, Brigitte. You were 20 seconds over. So I'm impressed. Well done. No, that's very interesting. Thank you very much for the interesting presentation and a walkthrough of the history of the partnership, the experiences, and also the added values. You know, the introduction of transboundary management must have been quite a policy and political experiment in India. And having the EU bring that expertise across the ocean must have been quite a challenge in itself. I think you touch on at least a point which is has been raised by our previous presenter, Mr. Abadi, in the Mediterranean. You know, the importance of the political will, and if you have that in hand, then the rest is just a question of time for the achievement. So thank you very much again, and we'll move on to our final panelist. The final panelist is Mr. Panagiotis Balabanis of DG Research and Innovation with the European Commission. He is head of the sector of water and circular economy and bio-based systems unit, and he's dealing with issues related to water resource efficiency, and circular economy. Mr. Balabanis, will you please present us with an overview of the EU response to Agenda 2020, Water for All, and the role of innovation in international cooperation on water. Over to you, Mr. Balabanis. Your 10 minutes starts now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mari. Thank you all for also this kind of invitation. Trying also to be a bit, brief, and trying also to also give also the floor and to have time for the discussion. I would just start, by highlighting, the importance of research and innovation in the water sector. As probably you know, many of you, water has been an important component of water research and innovation activities. And this, of course, through several, framework programs. I will not go into the details, but just to let you know, for instance, that, in the last, Horizon 20 framework program, there has been, more than, let's say, 300, let's say, water-related projects that they were able also to mobilize, I think, quite important funding. So the EU contribution also to these projects has been about 1.3 billion of euro through the Horizon Work program. And these, let's say, 300 projects have been also spread in, cover also a wide range of activities. Let's say we had projects on freshwater, ecosystem, aquatic ecosystems, about dealing with functioning of ecosystems. We have projects on what we call global water cycle, dealing also with extreme events, with the earth systems, hydrology, the hydromorphology. We have projects dealing with wider, water management issues, in particular also demand water allocations, scenarios. And then many of these projects also had a lot of, application of the information technologies, digital solutions have been an effort there. We had also projects dealing with the water and agriculture relationship, efficient use, irrigation, diffuse pollution. And little by little also we have also dealing with projects dealing with water and industry, wastewater treatment in the industries, but also what we call water and people, where we had also look about, how to manage water supply and sanitation issue, about how to manage also the Swiss sludge, about infrastructure network. So a very wide range of activities. So international cooperation has been also an important component because, all our projects are open to international cooperation. And then many of these projects that I mentioned had also a strong international partnership. But beyond this, let's say, bottom-up, I would say, approach, we have also tried to have some more structure, also international cooperation. And this, we use also what we call the international, the agreements that we have for science and technology cooperation. So there are several countries, they have international agreements, and these agreements also, some of them, they have, a strong, water component. So one example was also said earlier by Mamo Hololdin on South Africa. South Africa, for instance, had a very strong international cooperation, water cooperation component in their research innovation agenda. India as well. So this is also another area where, and this is also another good example where we have what we call a kind of a joint co-funding. As you know, India being, a kind of emerging economy, are not Indian partners are not entitled to receive EU funding. But then, by coming together closely, and this is a good example of successful example, because Indian and EU comes together, discuss this research priorities, and then they co-fund. So we support, in joint projects, we support the European partners, the Indian supports the Indians. Another example is there was, in China, for instance, was not has not, water in their, agenda. But on the other hand, we have also the EU-China Water Partnership, which was a kind of, I would say, multi-partner initiative. Of course, the policy DGs and the European Commission was involved. But there, as you can see, although a research component, and we have also trying also to support a kind of a research agenda for future cooperation, we are not able, for instance, to link our research activity with a policy perspective. And then another also very important political also initiative, I think this is the PRIMA. This is the PRIMA initiative. PRIMA initiative is also what we call an institutional partnership between the Commission also and the whole Mediterranean area. And this is also very important to strengthen, because this is a partnership which is done on equal basis. So we have, the European Mediterranean countries, but the African Mediterranean countries that are come together. And this is a very powerful example. We have expanded. This is an ongoing activity that we have, given that more 200, let's say, million of euro EU contributions to join establishing or joint projects. And this is also a very good cooperation. Just now, as regards, for the future, and of course, I have forgotten to say also, we have in the Water GPI, this is what the Water Joint Programming Initiative, which was, a kind of a kind of initiative, member states, let's say, initiative. So, and then we have supported, what we call these co-funded calls. We also support the joint calls, where also member states also bring their money, and they are in this context also European international countries have been also involved, and we have also South Africa again, Brazil, several also Morocco. So these are other countries that have been also involved. Now, what is also important is for the future, and I think this is I would like also to also strengthen this, is that we have, what we called also nowadays, at the Commission also, you are perhaps also familiar, publish what we call a global approach to research and innovation. This has been, communication for the Commission, and this is the and this global approach is about, to preserve openness, in research and innovation, to international cooperation, and also strengthen also multilateral partnerships, also to deliver also new solutions to the green, agenda, digital agenda, also health, also in the innovation challenges. And there, this is going to be achieved also modulating also bilateral cooperation in line also with, of course, European interests and values. I think this is for the first time, this is also very strengthened there. This is also, and also using also a kind of a team approach that it was also mentioned, so bringing together also the national, let's say, and the European also funding also together. And this approach is going also to be used in Horizon Europe. And but what is also important for us is in the water sector is that in the Horizon Europe, we have also, as it was also mentioned earlier, establish what we call this water for all partnerships. This is ensuring also water security for the planet. And this partnership for us is a kind of a major activity that we would like also to use as a way, to better strengthen the coordination of the national EU activities, but also going beyond the research per se. And this is also to address some of the issues that have been also raised in the previous presentation, is about how to ensure, a kind of follow-up of the outcome of research project, the uptake, how to support, the research policy interface. So these are elements which are going to be addressed. And in our view, this partnership is also an important element also to coordinate also the international research and innovation cooperation, because these partners are open to international partners. We have still some of them, and this is, South Africa is a good example. We would like also to see other also countries also to play a role there, because there, I think this is an opportunity also to, as I said, to go a further step. And also, I think this is also a good opportunity to try also to link our research activity with other policy initiatives. We have heard this morning about, the partnership programs that our colleagues in International Partnerships Directorate General, they have. So these are very important also to be linked. So I stop here, Mari. I hope that I didn't, expand a lot, and I think I will be open to participate in the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Balabanis. That's very interesting. I think the interesting point that you raised towards the end, which was also presented in the keynote with our participant from the Water Research Commission in South Africa, is that it's time to go beyond pilots, and we need to start valorizing, implementing, and putting research to work. With no more research for the sake of research. Right, we have some time for some questions. We have one or two which have been coming up in the chat box. And I encourage those of you who are still in the audience to please submit any questions into the chat box for the audience. What we do have for a brief moment is just a quick question to our panelists as we move into this last sort of section of the panel system. Of questions to address to our participants from the European Commission, and I have questions for our participants in the panel from the MED and on the EU-India partnership. And for the European Commission, I'd like to put this one to you, Arno, if I may. From the perspective of DG INPA, what are the current challenges being addressed with regards to EU policies on international cooperation in water? What are the main challenges right now? Not the objectives, not the future policies, but in your impression, the challenges of the day. Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much, Murray. I think we already talked about it, these challenges. And I would come back maybe to two of these challenges. The first one is probably is related to the international governance for water. And we see that we really need to strengthen this international governance as we have, we really need to have this big meeting in 2023, this watershed moment that will come next year. We really need to have all the stakeholders to come together to say that water is there, and you cannot just avoid the topic, and you need to really strengthen this international governance on water, because water is there and water is shared by everybody. And you cannot say that what you are doing on water there is not impacting somewhere else, because water is really part of this big cycle that is shared by everybody. And we see it very well when we look at the climate, the last JEC report that has a full chapter on water. And it's really impressive how they have been able really to deepen knowledge on this, and maybe we can go a bit beyond that, beyond this climate lens, and try to understand, to have some let's say some more integrated analysis of where we are with water globally, so that we can really share, raise this agenda globally. Then there is another thing that is extremely important that I talked about, is the problem of this water financing. And this water financing problem is really linked to innovation also. Sometimes it does not seem to be that evident, but the digitalization, for instance, of the water sector is a very, very, very strong and powerful movement to facilitate investments. Because once you have the digitalization, you begin to have transparency. You begin to be able to structure the water sector much more differently, because you can distinguish what you do at the production level, the production of water, the transport of the water, and then the distribution of the water. You can begin to segment a bit the services you can provide to these different segments of the market. And you can begin to develop PPPs that are much more powerful. You can begin to have much more regulation at the different levels, at the production level, at the transport level, at the distribution level. And you can begin to think how you can mainstream the principles of human rights within this overall agenda. So I think knowing what you are doing in terms of production, transportation, and distribution of the water, so that you can attract public and private investments, will be extremely important in the future for this sector, so that we can really beef up the investments and for the sector. So that's, I would say, two important things that I would project for the future. Thank you, Marie.
Okay, thank you very much, Arno. On that same question, I'd like to jump across to the research side with Mr. Balavanis from DG Research and Innovation perspective. What do you see as research and innovation EU policies that are addressing the current challenges, and what challenges would you focus on? Can you please give us a couple of minutes on that? Over.
Thank you, and thank you also, Mari. As I said, I would try also perhaps also to link perhaps this with what Arno also said. I think the challenge for me is also the research challenges. As I said, we have a lot of knowledge. We will always, be in a position also to support, to sustain also the research also capacity. But the main challenge is how to make impacts, and to make impacts is how also to resolve also the problem, and how to make also the use. I think the challenge is how to use also the outcome of the research projects. And I have also to stress that this is not only a challenge on international cooperation. This is the same challenge we often also have, perhaps in a less degree also at the European scale. There is also, let's say, the faculty also to translate, to use also the innovative solutions in the implementation, for instance, or water framework directive, or for instance, urban wastewater urban directive. So these are, I think, these are the challenges. And for me, for this, what is important is, I think this is the synergies between. I'm not quite sure if there is. Of course, the gap, the financing gap is there, but on the other hand, I think that if we manage better also to strengthen also the synergies between also the different funding sources, we can also have, some important, let's say, steps forwards. I take the example, for instance, what Arno said about, this bringing together also the public and the private investment. So these are also one of the objectives of many of the research priorities, like in the partnerships, in the mission approach. Something that I've forgotten to say, that we have also what is we call the European missions, and we have identified 5 of them, and almost the 4 of them, which is about restoring the ocean and fresh water, is about climate adaptation, is about smart cities, about soil. So these are water related, and the issue is how also to make the links, because this is also the also aim to bring together the public, the private also sector. But how to do this is how to use, for instance, this the implementation of these synergies. I think the synergies are important, but in how to implement this is something which is also important to look forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much on that. I'm just looking into the chat box now, just so we'll get that off. Okay, those are questions for our colleagues and our participants from the EU institutions. I have a question I'd like to also have addressed by our participants from the geographical, from the Mediterranean and from the EU-India partnership. The question is, and I'll put this first to Birgit, please. What role does international cooperation on water have to solve forthcoming global challenges? For example, climate change, climate-driven migration. Birgit, can you speak on that? Over.
So sorry, I'm not sure if I understood your question correctly. So you're
Okay.
asking how, again, please.
Okay, the role of international cooperation, how can that address challenges like climate change and climate-driven migration?
Okay, yeah, I think, of course, the international cooperation is extremely important when it comes to global topics like this, to really work towards a common understanding. If I think currently about India and the EU, having worked in the EU and understanding like the climate challenges there, of course they are similar in India, but then it's good to know how the implementation on the ground works and what kind of let's say problems and challenges are there where the EU can provide input and the other way around. And then of course in the end, knowing that, putting it all together in the end on the international scale and level is crucial. And I think this ground building work is essential for it. So I think in the end, it will take us all forward, that knowledge.
Thank you very much on that, from that perspective. And finally, Mr. Abadi from the Mediterranean, how do you see international cooperation on water addressing the challenges which you've addressed in your presentation earlier? Over to you.
Thank you, Maui, for this interesting question, because absolutely, I don't think that we can overcome any challenge without being cooperating with the neighbors and beyond, and the neighbor of the neighbor. Especially those challenges they don't really apply for visa to enter from space to another space. They are common challenge, mutual challenges. And the only way to overcome them is to find the best way to cooperate in order to overcome these challenges that are jeopardizing our ability for more stable life to our future generation. But the issue here is we have to think on a different approaches. The first one, how is to bolster whole governmental approaches within the cooperation. As an example, you will find different clusters that the water people from the same country or the water people from the region, they are talking together and they are not talking to other actors, including the energy, including the finance, the people, bankers, and also other kind of politicians. So here I would love to tackle the cooperation in terms of a whole government approach cooperation that bring together also what we call it the multi-stakeholder processes in the whole society approach. The narrative here we need to build is to also engage in the North-South cooperation, engage the beneficiary countries in the actions and planning for any future support, either from development cooperation or from loans or from equity funding into the planning process, not only to consult with them. We have 20 million euros and we want to invest this 20 million euros on the gender or in the youth or in the energy sector. They have to engage them from the first beginning to design their programs. And this is very important to be tackled at regional and international cooperation level. And how to do this, you need to empower the UN agencies and other regional actors with a mandate, a concrete, a solid mandate in order to do so. The second part that I need to highlight is to bring the knowledge that produced internationally and regionally into the table of politicians. Here, I think that if we don't do what we call it water diplomacy or science diplomacy, we will not succeed in order to overcome our challenges. The last point, I noticed that many of the organizations, they try to say that we are depoliticizing the water, we are depoliticizing the energy sector, we are trying to do a depoliticization process for those important sectors, which is absolutely a big mistake, because I know that we need to spin off those sectors from a political general arenas, but we need to create their own political sphere that absolutely respect their political nature. I cannot say that I want to work on the water sector, avoiding that it's a very political topic. I cannot say that I want to work on the energy sector and it's really very, very big political issue. So we need to, if we want to enhance the political cooperation on water, we need, in general, we need to tackle it in an eagle eye and to know that it needs technical input, scientific input, financial input, and it needs to be absolutely with a political input and political will, as well as in our creating a political sphere that bring together all multi and whole government approaches into the system. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Right, that's from that. We have a couple of questions also coming in from the audience, and there's one that I think it can be for you, Arno. And it's linked to international development. Is there a program on water that targets African islands? Now we know that SIDS are involved. And this is from the Portuguese perspective. How can Portugal facilitate the entrance of African Portuguese countries in this partnership for Africa? Can you address that, please, Arno?
Thank you, Murray. All the different programs that are in the different islands, it's not a regional program or regional partnership, but it's really the program is mostly developed at the country level through the subsidiarity principle. So basically, it is the countries like Mozambique or Cabo Verde or the Mauritius, etc., that are developing their own programs, and usually the European Union delegations are in contact with the representations of the different European countries to develop this country program. So I guess that the Portuguese representations are always involved and in contact with our EU delegations. Otherwise, I would encourage you to make the contacts at the local level, so that you can see at the local level, this is the best level to have the cooperation, what can be done. But what I know is that for the Africa Islands, there is not much on water. It's more in the Caribbean and in the Pacific that we have more water actions at the level of the islands. I believe In particular, Mauritius has some activities, but I don't think Cabo Verde, neither Comoros or Seychelles may not have much, for what I know. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Arno. I have another question, and this one is, I think this would be for yourself, Birgit. Is knowledge transfer and exchange programs also part of the collaboration between the EU and India partnership? Can you speak on that, please, Birgit? Over.
Thank you, Murray. So we do have knowledge transfer, of course, when it comes to research. It was mentioned that the research cooperation regarding the EU Horizon 2020 program. There are 7 projects, water projects between India and the EU in place with a volume of about 30 million euro. And of course, there's a tremendous knowledge exchange when it comes to technologies, but also scientific and practical approaches. And what we also do within the India-EU water partnership, and that was, of course, and unfortunately hampered and is still hampered by the pandemic, when we are holding events like the India-EU Water Forum, or when we are partnering with the India Water Week or the India Water Impact Summit and other events, we bring in European expertise. So we are inviting EU experts to contribute on the different topics in water and river basin management planning. But of course, also we are doing business sessions, and I hope that the situation will improve and we can do these events again physically in India. We are currently planning an India-EU Water Forum for October, in the hope that this can actually take place on site in Delhi. So I hope I was able to answer that question.
No, thank you very much. Absolutely. No, that was very clear. And thank you also, just a comment that's come up in the chat box on Mr. Abadi's reiteration, as he did in his presentation, on the need for the political will to be front and center on a number of these partnerships. I think we have time for maybe one more question before we do our wrap up. And this one is linked to water research and innovation. Water in the circular economy. I think we need to strengthen water in the circular economy, bringing together various sectors: water, food, energy, climate, health. The question is this being accelerated? And what needs to be done to correct the economics of a circular economy if we're going to accelerate that? And I think, Mr. Balabanis, this might be a question for you. Over to you.
Yes, thank you also, Mari, and thank also for the question. Yes, I think this is applying also the circular economy, let's say, approach to water has been also a key component, of water research and innovation activities in the last years already in Horizon 2020. I have to perhaps also to say that in this type of projects, we didn't have yet a strong international cooperation, but I think the opportunities also are there, and I think many of the outcomes of this project could be also be used in international also context. But I think, yes, we are doing that. There have been, I'm pleased also to share, a link with, our list of the catalog of projects, so people can also see what is done in this area. And I think we also look about, also business models, how to accelerate also this circular economy. There are also projects there. And I have also to say that now in preparation of the next work program, we're trying also to what we call this, the mechanism and instruments with coordination, support action, to bring together these experiences also on business models, and for instance, how, for instance, to recover material energy also for wastewater treatment. And we would like also to see, to consolidate these fundings and to see also what are the pros and cons, of this type of approaches. Thank you, Mari. The floor to you back. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I think that's all the time we have now for questions. So I'll soon be handing over to the session manager, David. But before I do that, I want to thank all of you, all of the panelists for your presence and your well thought out contribution and your reflection on the questions you presented and bringing together 4 interesting institutional and geographic perspectives to water and its role in international cooperation. If there's any outstanding questions, we will address them with David, and we will be in touch with the rest of the audience on the results of that. So I think we can wrap up this panel now. And David, I'm happy to hand over to you.
Thank you so much, Mary. Brilliant facilitation of that panel. Some really interesting discussions and some insights there. So thank you to all the panel members. Your additions to this event today have been very welcomed and given us a real perspective from different angles and different geographical perspectives. Just to wrap up a little bit from today's part of the event. So keeping in mind that we really delve into some of the more practical examples tomorrow when we really enter into what is a water-orientated living lab and what does that mean from an international perspective. Today we heard a lot about where we look at aspects with regards to the policies, different types of implementation actions. We see a call from Mama Clothing in her keynote speech to have more bottom-up approach, making sure that we're getting all stakeholders involved. There's also a look that we need to have more water financing and innovation and specifically looking at the public and private actors coming together within that. Arnaud mentioned very eloquently about the idea of digitalization and the important aspect that brings to international cooperation, specifically when we start to look at the aspects related to transparency. We also heard from Panos the idea that business models are looking to accelerate some of the circular economy aspects that we're looking at in terms of water and innovation and research on that side. We need to make our impacts that are happening on the water side and international cooperation more visible, making sure that the examples that we have of the Danube, for example, is something that is seen as a good example of international cooperation and how peace can be developed when we talk about cooperating on water. And all of these aspects really come and culminate into a science diplomacy aspect. And again, another aspect that was mentioned by Arnaud, with that keeping in mind how we can really bring cooperation on water across boundaries. Just to give you a bit of an idea about what we're looking at tomorrow, we start the morning with a little bit of a recap over what we discussed today. We will look into the water-orientated living labs, and we'll have a first talk from Rania Amar, who is a professor of environmental biotechnology at the City of Science, Research and Technology application from Egypt, where she'll be talking a little bit about the So What Living Lab. And this is a great carry on from what Mama Clothing was telling us about the Afri Alliance project. And so to give a real practical example of how international cooperation on water has worked in that sense. And then we'll also look about the processes of developing and building up a water-orientated living lab with Water Valley Denmark from Ulla and Pia, that they will both give us a and a perspective on how that process has happened in order to bring in not only local actors, but international actors in practical implementation of water. We will then break out into 2 different rooms where you will get the opportunity to really engage with the speakers and to get your own experiences, and even to have an opportunity to let them know where or they might or might not have better options of international cooperation, and what can actually be done differently on that side. We'll bring it back, and we'll start to stimulate the ideas of water-orientated living labs. And that's something that we can open space for all of you to create your own water-orientated living labs with an international perspective, and something that we can follow up a year later on that. But with that, I would just like to once again thank all of our speakers here today. You've really laid the context for this flagship event of International Water Dialogue. And thank you so much for joining us all here as participants. And we look forward to seeing you tomorrow as we delve deeper into these aspects. So for now, thank you so much, and see you all tomorrow.
Thank you. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you also.
Thank you very much. Bye. Enjoy the
Thank
day.
you. Bye.
Thank you.